All right, we are back with Nicole. Now, Nicole, we talked about various social issues and solutions related to people of color as a whole. However, too many people think that all people of color experience racism and inequality in the same way. If we're looking at these social issues and how they impact Black women specifically, what problems should we be aware of? Should we be aware of that directly impact Black women, and what are some of the possible solutions that we can all be a part of?
Sure. So are a few, I think, that are near and dear to me. I think I briefly mentioned African American infant and maternal mortality is one that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a huge problem for generations. We are seeing Black women die during childbirth, or their babies die within that first year of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about that is, going back to what we talked about earlier, these broader issues that impact people's health. One of the things that we talk about a lot in public health is that education is a social determinant of health, meaning the more education you have, the more years of school you have, the longer you live. And that's not anecdotal. That's not, oh, I just see that on, TV. No,
Mm-hmm.
we've done studies. The more education you have, the longer you live, or the healthier you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we are finding with African American infant and maternal mortality, for example, African American women with higher educational degrees, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, doctorate degrees, still have worse maternal and infant mortality rates than white women with a high school diploma. So
Hmm.
even when something like education is supposed to be protective of you as far as making you healthier, in some instances it's not a resiliency factor for Black women. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big one. We still have issues with STDs, and HIV rates are very high in relation to other races as well. And I think ultimately the other thing that is really important is this stress factor. Stress, the stress of racism, the stress of, all these inequities and things that are happening wear your body down. And then you look around, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes. And if you live in a community that doesn't have adequate healthcare access, then you're setting yourself up for complications, loss of limbs, stroke, heart disease. So those are really the three big ones in the African American community, especially around African American women. Now, as far as solutions, again, going back to my public health frame, it's not about, well, tell people to eat better.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
you got to tell these women to go get prenatal care. That's what's wrong. They need to stop eating this or that. It's not that. We need to think about, how do we recreate our society so that these women are not stressed, because stress also is a factor for infant mortality and maternal mortality. The other thing that's coming around, that's starting to come back, especially around the infant mortality issue, is doulas, making sure that women have advocates that can assist them and work with them throughout this whole process until they deliver. Because we all know that there is some bias, right? There's some
Mm-hmm.
implicit bias among healthcare providers. Whether that healthcare provider thinks they're a racist or not, that implicit bias is still there. Maybe a patient says, "I don't feel well," and the doctor is like, "Oh, you're fine." No, 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 I don't feel well. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to advocate or to push for that, then you're left in a situation that's not beneficial to you. So there's so many different things that are happening, but ultimately the problem is racism, which causes folks to be stressed and then ultimately leads them to a whole host of health issues.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up the issue of racism being a public health issue. I remember they just came out recently talking about how we really need to approach racism from a public health perspective, because people oftentimes think that it's just this a thing that you're uncomfortable with, but it goes so much deeper into that. And like you were saying, um, not even if we were just talking about it from the perspective of discrimination in healthcare, but if you're even just talking about like the actual physical stress of having to deal with that constantly, is not just an emotional stress, but it's a physical strain as well.
Absolutely. I remember once sitting in a training. I forgot exactly what it was about. You know, we do a lot of training and meetings and stuff. But I was sitting in, I was sitting in a training and someone said something to the effect that if you've ever had to worry about what school you're going to send your kids to, that's stress.
Mm-hmm.
That's racism. And I'm sitting here like I never thought about that, but I have had to think about where I'm going to send my daughter to school. I've had to make those little adjustments and fudge, where she lives. It's too late. Y'all can't send me to jail for that because she's 23 now. But I'm just saying, we all have to make those decisions because we know, even if we don't know academically, we didn't get them our master's or doctorate degree, we know that the schools in our neighborhood are crap.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we want our kids to do better, we have to figure out a way to get them to school across town. And we're going to do what we have to do that. But that is stressful. And on it at its core is racist. If I have to worry about being followed around in the store or the fact that there are no grocery stores close by, I have to catch 3 buses to get to a store. That's horrible. And people don't realize, first of all, that it's not normal, that other folks don't have those experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we can fix those things. It's not, oh, that's just the way it is. We
Yeah.
can change those things.
Now, when we spoke earlier, there was this concept of yours that you were uh, talking about regarding this sense of duality that has been present in your life, and it involves the imbalance of power and privilege. What is this duality about, and what role does it play in your life?
So I just have always felt like I have been walking this line, even as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I grew up with the wonderful blessing of having my grandparents and my great grandparents on my mother's side. And so they were what I consider rich by Black people standards in South LA. They had come to Los Angeles in the 1930s and were business owners. They lived in a community called View Park. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how many people are from LA, but View Park is considered Black Beverly Hills. So they had this big house, and in that house, and I'm looking at all the things that they have, going through all their wonderful stuff from the old days, black and white photos and things. But then I also live in South LA, not too far from USC, in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment with my parents. We didn't have brand new clothes, brand new car. We were poor. So it was like this weird, even from that age, it was this weird, like back and forth. And as I grew older, I started to realize like, what is this? How am I, I have this master's degree, this graduate degree, but again, I'm this Black woman in this space that is also experiencing things like teen pregnancy and all these other things. It's an interesting duality to have, and it can be confusing if you don't understand it. And I think I've been able to figure it out and use it to my advantage. But it is an interesting thing to have the benefit of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I write about this in my book. The benefit of understanding what everything is, what's going on in an academic sort of abstract level, but
Mm-hmm.
also the burden of, hey, you're talking about me, and this is not going to, as much as I know about it, I'm still, can be a victim to all the things that society is kind of pressing upon me as a Black woman. It's a weird space to be in. Very weird.
And you're saying that you had that chance to sort of understand that duality and learn how to harness it. For people who are sort of trying to, get to that point, do you have any advice for them on how to manage that?
One of the things that I've done is say, you know what, I'm going to take whatever power I have, because we all have power to some extent, it
Mm-hmm.
might be a little bit, to try to make a difference in my community. So that's how I was able to harness that and kind of push forward with it.
Mm-hmm.
And in one way, I was doing pop-ups. I still do them, except for now, because Rona
Mm-hmm.
done messed up everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I literally opened my backyard to Black women business owners, charge them a little bit of nothing, and wanting to really get people used to the fact that we should be buying local. We should be
Mm-hmm.
recycling our dollars in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the ways that I harness that duality. Like, okay, well, I got the, book smart. So yeah, I went to school, but I also love my neighborhood and my people and my community.
Mm-hmm.
Side story, I live 4 blocks away from where Nipsey hustle was killed.
Wow.
So when we talk about living in the hood, I live in the hood. Like I don't like I'm in the neighborhood. The day he was shot, the helicopters, I saw them. So it's like, but I'm here and I made a conscious effort to stay here. So how can I then now make this better in some sense? I mean, I think our community is fine, but how can I build community where I stand? And I think that is another way to harness. Think of ways, what skill you have. Do you want to do pop-up shops? Do you know how to cook really well and want to teach other people how to do that? There's always an opportunity to reach out and to bring people in, and to help elevate others. And I think we should think more about that and realize it's not just about doing these big, humongous things,
Hmm.
that it could be something very small, but it could be as effective and even more effective. If you could teach three people how to cook, if you're a chef and you could teach three people how to cook, or how to go to the store and shop in a way to save money, just three people on your street, that is valuable.
Hmm.
And it creates a sense of community. And I think that to me is really important as far as, making sense of sort of this disconnect and this weirdness that we see in our world today. Because things are like way like, oh my gosh, what is really happening right now? I'm thinking we're heading in a good space, but it's so tiring to see that we have to continuously fight for our humanity. It's insane to me.
I love that idea that you were talking about earlier about how you don't have to. If you want to be involved in the community, you don't have to do these big, ginormous things. Like building the community can be small, everyday actions. I actually wanted to hear more about that idea you had about opening up your backyard and having like. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So I had a friend. Well, I, there was a fashion designer. She's since left Los Angeles. She's in Atlanta right now.
Hmm.
And I love buying her clothes. She's a local Black woman designer. Buy all her stuff all the time. Just I'm broke now because I have all these clothes that from her line. And I was like, I want to do something. Just talking to her, I said, I want to do something and bring people together some kind of way. And she said, years ago, I used to have these pop-up shops. I would just charge everybody $50 and they bring their table, bring their things to sell. I would invite all my friends and we would do it. And I was like, really? She said, yeah, let's do it. And that was it. It was that simple. I just reached out to her. She said, let me reach out to my other friends that are creatives, that make jewelry, that make other clothes, that make body butter, shea butter. Somebody in the neighborhood makes shea butter. Somebody in the hood makes shea butter. Call them up. And so I made a flyer. We put it up. And of course, tagged all my friends. Hey, you guys come out. And it was fun. I've done how many? I've done them for about 2 years
Oh
now.
my gosh!
We were supposed
Wow.
Yeah, we were supposed to have one for Mother's Day, but of course Rona. And I said, yeah, I work in public health. I cannot even
Yeah.
get conscious
Yeah.
open up my backyard. I cannot. They're like, come on. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Okay, what that look like? The public
Yeah.
health lady is a source of a COVID-19. I'm like, no. So,
It will ruin your
um,
brand. No.
you know what I'm saying? So, but it doesn't cost anything. You open up the gate. We have food, little snacks, and people really come and they get it. To me, being able to talk to the person that makes your clothes, being able to talk to the person that makes your candles, being able to talk to the lady that makes your nail polish that lives down the street and she's 16, little young Black woman, and have a conversation. To me, that's so valuable. You can't call Target and be like, Target, so what's up? Can
Hmm.
you make this in green? You
Yeah.
can't
Hmm.
do that. And it's just so amazing. I've done classes, real estate classes. I've had my real estate agent come and we sit outside, bring snacks, and people come and they ask questions. So you can build community where you stand. You don't have to run for office. You don't have to, be a martyr and lay out in the middle of the street. I mean, even though that is important, but if that's not your vibe, you don't have to do that. You can do it right in your house. You can get some folks together and have any kind of thing that you want to do, of course, with social distancing. But it can be done, and you can make a difference where you are. You don't have to do anything huge and spend a lot of money. It's definitely doable and important.